In this presentation, we will look at the new role art will take in society and how it will align with fashion. We will look at the changing role of art and two art movements that directly affected fashion, the Pre-Raphaelites and the arts and crafts movements. Art takes on a new role after photography matures from just a way to document events to more mature uses. Photography is now used widely to do the things art used to do: introduce new ideas, evoke emotional responses, ask questions about the human condition, and capture important times. Let's look at what art was like in the Victorian era. Styles of art were dictated and produced under the influence of the European academies of art. The Academy was an official society or governing body that set taste and rules. They were divided by philosophy and had wealthy backers, sometimes even government subsidies. Their real power came in the form of controlling exhibitions. They could refuse to show any artist whose work they thought did not live up to their ideas. This effectively blocked innovation, as the academies froze into the tenets of neoclassicism or romanticism. A classic example of artists who did not live up to the French Academy's rules were the Impressionists. On the right, we see an academic landscape, complete with a classical ruin on the hillside. On the left, Claude Monet. The Academy refused to allow Monet and his fellows put their paintings in the annual art exhibition. So in 1863, they formed the Salon des Refusés, or the Refused Ones, as a rival event 2 weeks later. This started the idea of the avant-garde in art, or art that is more progressive or objects to mainstream ideas. This is an important moment in the history of art and culture. One of the works in this salon is this painting titled Symphony in White. Whistler was a proponent of art for art's sake, and he intended this work to be a study of composition, how to arrange the colors white, the shapes and planes and proportions. It bothered him to no end that everyone insisted they saw symbolism and hidden meanings in this work, such as the loss of innocence. It is also considered an interesting early example of the effect seeing Japanese art for the first time had on artists in Europe. Notice the flattened perspective and tilting the floor up to be part of the composition. Let's look at an avant-garde art movement called the Pre-Raphaelites, a group of painters, writers, and art critics formed in 1848. They objected to academic Victorian art too, wishing for the artist to determine their own ideas. They were a mixture of Romanticism and the zeitgeist of the medieval or Gothic revival. They looked back to the medieval art and culture as more spiritual and a creative time. This was also a rebellion against industrial consumer culture, where nothing guides taste but making money. Time does not permit me to explain much about their art, so if you are interested, I encourage you to do a little research. However, they will also affect fashion. As a philosophical group, they have a profound effect beyond the practice of painting. They created artistic dress, a fashion movement that rejected austere dressing rules, heavy structured clothing, and mainstream fashion. They wanted to see simpler designs, beautiful fabric featured for its own sake, not just to hold trim. They dressed their models in long, fluid gowns with loose waistlines, and they objected to corsets reshaping the figure. They preferred colors found in nature instead of bright, saturated aniline dyes. In many ways, they were the hippies or flower children of the 19th century, with their thoughts of returning to nature and a golden past. This is one of those big ideas that there could be an avant-garde way of fashion, just as there is now avant-garde art. In the 1860s, artistic dress became popular in intellectual circles and among artists for its natural beauty. It also reinforced their social ideals of using quality materials, respect for work of the hands, and the superiority of medieval design. The first way this style of dress was worn was as a neoclassical medieval combination, as you can see in the center. It emphasized a wide waist like the statue of the Venus de Milo on the right, and it featured slender skirts. This pure practice was seen in paintings and illustrations, and a few women did wear it, but it was so extreme it was rarely practiced in this most pure form, although it will have a profound effect on later fashions. The second and more common way this was practiced was to modify current fashion by not wearing a crinoline, rejecting the corset, and featuring a natural waistline. The designs are more simple and featured some aspects of the past. As a side thought, notice the effect of Japanese aesthetics in the painting on the left. The woman is holding a Japanese fan. There is a vase on the mantel, and at the bottom right we can see flower blossoms arranged in a way that reflects Japanese arrangement. So not only do artistically avant-garde thinkers object to current fashion, but they are beginning to embrace another era of East meets West. In the 1880s, a slightly different movement called aesthetic dress grows from both political reform and the artistic dress idea. It will begin to incorporate more Japanese traits as well, so we will visit that style again another time. The princess gown in the left came into fashion during the Second Bustle era, and it lent itself to artistic fashion very well. The Grecian gown on the right features the more narrow skirts, the uncorseted figure, and a simpler design. This aesthetic dress also objected to the exploitation of women by fashion, giving them something more timeless to wear. Prominent actresses, writers, and artists, patrons will adopt this dress. Aesthetic dress branched out to include men. The most famous proponent was Oscar Wilde, who wrote a treatise called The Philosophy of Dress for a newspaper in 1885 that was thought to be lost, but was rediscovered in 2012. In it he said, "A fashion is merely a form of ugliness so absolutely unbearable that we have to alter it every 6 months." He proposed men return to knee breeches, and he wore a velvet sack coat and waistcoat. This was a return to a time when men could pursue beauty or aesthetics before the Industrial Revolution required rigid conformity. The second art movement we'll look at is arts and crafts. This is inspired in 1861 by the writings of John Ruskin, and it was a large association of artists, designers, and various makers. They rebelled against mass market taste. They thought industrialized goods were of very poor taste and poor quality. Who was designing these? Did they have a philosophy, or was it just gewgaws to sell to the public? They objected to a loss of appreciation for handmade items. Everyone wanted new factory-made goods. And they used, as an example, the way medieval guilds were arranged, again harking back to the time in the zeitgeist of everything in the Middle Ages being more pure or more creative. Before looking at some examples of arts and crafts work, let's pause once again to remember a mainstream Victorian interior with the knickknacks gone wild. This is arts and crafts style. This is interior decoration that embraced a Japanese sensibility of calm and negative space, geometric shapes, flat motifs as seen on the walls, motifs drawn from nature, more natural colors and materials. The items are human scaled with a lower ceiling. These are made by artisans in a workshop, not by machines in a factory. Other examples show these hallmarks as well: flat graphic style, motifs drawn from nature and natural materials, an emphasis on pleasing line and shapes. They also design fashions and affect other designers. They wished to revive the textile arts, which are now in danger of being forgotten under the influence of mass manufacture. Things such as hand embroidery, stenciling, knotwork, weaving, ceramic beads, natural dyes, and regional or folk dress styles now being eradicated by the fashion industry. Many of these same arts will be revived once again in the 1960s and 1970s after another round of fashion tyranny devalues them. While this pure form of arts and crafts clothing will be worn by a relatively small population of intellectuals and artists, it will eventually have a longer-term effect on mainstream culture, as we will see. Probably the most enduring name to come from this movement is William Morris, a textile designer, writer, and activist. His wallpaper and fabric designs made him a household name, and people all over Europe and America will embrace his flat graphic style. His designs were made in a workshop environment by trained artisans and therefore were made in smaller lots. Owning Morris designs set one apart as a discerning individual. You can still get these designs in wallpaper and fabric today. Another business founded during this time is still with us, Liberty of London, which specialized in art fabrics. They have revived many of their historic designs for order today. Artistic dress and the arts and crafts movement will combine with another movement in the zeitgeist, dress reform. Dress reformers objected to the fashions of the Victorian era as impractical and exploitive to women, hobbling them with outrageous silhouettes and decoration. Dress reformers were largely middle-class women who were starting the first wave of feminism. The combination of this assault from both the artistic and intellectual class and the more practical middle classes will prove too much, and the complex, confining fashions of the bustle era will soon crumble.